amendment proposed after clause 55, certain new clauses printed on the Master's List Amendment 109B. Amendment 109C is an amendment to 109B, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, may I start by thanking my noble friend for being a listening minister, and thank her also for the hard work that she has put into bringing forward this amendment. She's explained what Government Amendment 109B does, and essentially it brings the guidance under which non-crime hate incident records are made by the police under statutory guidance to be issued by the Secretary of State. That is very welcome. But I do have some some questions to ask about the amendment, and some points to make which did appear originally in my original amendment, but don't actually figure in 109B. The first one is the Amendment 109C standing in my name, which makes it mandatory for the Secretary of State to issue this guidance. That, I think, was the sense of the House when we debated it, that the Secretary of State should do this, not that the Secretary of State should have the option of doing it. But in subsection 1, the very first line, more or less, the word may appears, which I think should be must. Now, I will make clear at this point it's not my intention to press any of my amendments to a division or to seek the opinion of the House, but I would like to hear my noble friend's explanation as to why may is, in her view, an appropriate word here, when the sense of the House was, I think, that it should be must. The anxiety, my Lords, is not that the current Secretary of State will fail to issue the Code of Practice, because quite clearly, having brought forward the amendment, it would be very strange if she didn't act. The anxiety is that a future Secretary of State could, using the word may, revert to the status quo if they wished, because there'd be no obligation on them to maintain the Code of Practice in the future. So I would just like to hear some assurance from my noble friend, and possibly even a word that she might bring forward this modest change at third reading. My Amendment 109E affirms the importance of freedom of expression, especially in the light of the recent Court of Appeal decision in the Miller case. But in the interests of brevity, I'm not going to comment on this amendment further, but leave it to more qualified persons, noble lords, who I think may wish to comment on it after me, because I know we have a very heavy day. Turning to my amendment number 114E, this relates to the disclosure of non-crime hate incidents in response to a request for an enhanced criminal record check. Now, noble lords are clear in their own minds, I'm sure, that the question of recording these incidents is a wholly separate matter from their disclosure in response to the criminal record check that I've just mentioned. Now, the government case on this point, if I may anticipate what my noble friend is going to say, seems to me to be that there is already statutory guidance which covers disclosure, and it's really more or less adequate the way it stands. I think, my lords, that isn't entirely the case. Not everyone is convinced. And I take a modest example. In arguments in front of the Court of Appeal, in the Miller case recently, counsel for the College of Policing was clear in saying that their client, the College of Policing, would take the view that there were circumstances in which it would have been appropriate for the relevant police force to disclose this non-crime hate incident if Mr. Miller applied for certain jobs. For example, if he were applying to work with transgender children. But of course, the state of affairs today is such that potentially any child is a transgender child. So effectively, they were saying that he would not be able to work because of the fluidity of the decision-making that the child has about that. They were effectively saying that Mr. Miller would have been barred from working with children because of this tweet that was objected to, which the court didn't entirely agree was appropriate to come under this restriction. So I think that there is a lot to be said for reviewing, at the very least, if the government is not minded to adopt my suggestion in Amendment 114E, there is, at the very least, a strong case for the government reviewing the existing statutory guidance to ensure it is fully in line with the findings of the Court of Appeal. And on that matter, again, I'd be very grateful for an assurance from my noble friend. Amendment 109D, in the name of the noble Lord, my noble friend Lord Blencathra, is one I have some general sympathy with, but I'm sure the noble Lord can make the case for it much better than I can, so I shall pass on. If I could come now to a helpful suggestion. It used to be the case, or it still is the case perhaps, that there are very large numbers of complaints that reach police forces that are purportedly complaints about fraud. And in order to help police forces manage these complaints, many of which are not really about fraud at all, a little while ago the Home Office set up a central unit called Action Fraud, to which the complaints are referred before they are investigated, so that more expert eyes can look at them, and then, if they have substance, refer them back to the relevant police force in order for an investigation to take place. Now, it seems to me that this is a model that perhaps could be applied in relation to non-crime hate incidents. And again, I don't expect a commitment today from my noble friend, but it could well be that something of this sort would make the system a great deal less variable and uncertain, which is one of the problems that afflicts it at the moment. So again, I'd be grateful to hear if she had something to say about that. And finally, before I sit down, is my noble friend going to be able to say when she wraps up, to answer two questions when she wraps up? The first is, while the new guidance is pending, will the Home Office ensure that the College of Policing ceases the practice of its current guidance so that no more incidents will be recorded in the meantime? Or what does she envisage during this period while we're waiting for the new guidance? And the second is, when the new guidance comes into effect, one assumes with different criteria to those currently in the guidance from the College of Policing, what is going to happen to historic existing cases of non-crime hate incident records? Will they be retained as they are? Will they be extinguished? Or will they be reviewed and modified in the light of the new guidance?